Welcome back to the Motivational Mic, the show where we dive into real stories of resilience, reinvention, and the power of purpose. Today's episode is one that is truly inspiring. I'm honored to sit down with Elena Bliss, the founder of Brittney's Believers, an organization dedicated to honoring the memory of Brittney and supporting children and families affected by childhood cancer. Brittney's journey with embryonal rhabdomyosarcoma was tragically short, but her legacy lives on through advocacy, awareness, research, and direct support for families in need. In this conversation, we explore hope, resilience, and how loss can be transformed into a mission that makes a real difference in the lives of children and family facing unimaginable challenges. Please welcome Elena to the show. Hey, so how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself to start off?
Yeah, so my name is Elena and my daughter Brittney, she was diagnosed with embryonal rhabdomyosarcoma in May of 2022, and she is the reason why Brittney's Believers Foundation exists.
Well, can you share some of Brittney's story and what inspired the creation of Brittney's Believers?
Of course. So when Brittney was diagnosed in May of 2022, it was actually thought to be an ear infection. She had gone to the pediatrician a few times that week, and ultimately we ended up in the emergency room after we started noticing some deformities in her face, almost like she had, experienced a stroke. And she was just 4 years old, so it's pretty uncommon for that to be happening. After a lot of testing, they found a mass in her inner ear. So for that type of cancer, it's usually found in like the head or the neck or in the extremities. And so hers was in the inner ear. So it kind of was a little misdiagnosed at first. They thought it was a different type of cancer. So that shipped us off to Boston Children's, where then eventually she had a biopsy, which confirmed that it was this embryonal rhabdomyosarcoma. And so at 4 years old, she started her chemo treatment. She has also had to undergo proton radiation. So we were looking at about a year of treatment plan for Brittney. So trying to grasp and wrap our heads around the fact that our daughter had cancer, and then her having to undergo all these treatments at just 4 years old. You can only imagine, like, they don't understand what's going on, and it's a very challenging time. And so throughout her journey, Brittney started to really ask questions. She wanted to know, like, what was going to happen to her. And I think that was really incredible that at 4 years old, she was really trying to be part of the process as to what was happening. And so during her treatment, you always see a lot of other families that are going through it, and they have their kind of tagline as far as, like, the community that rallies behind them. And so ours started out as Brittney's Believers, and it was just kind of a way that people could support us throughout this journey. We just thought that this was going to be a chapter of Brittney's story, and we would, go through treatment, we would do what we were supposed to, and move forward in our lives. But about halfway through, Brittney's cancer spread, and there was no reason why. She was on active treatment. So her cancer spread. It ended up spreading to the meninges around her brain, which is very hard to treat, and it's called leptomeningeal. And unfortunately, it's a very terminal diagnosis when that happens. So we were, again, tasked with trying to find ways that we could try to beat this. So we ended up trying different chemos, different treatments. Unfortunately, nothing was going in our favor, and Brittney ended up passing June 6th of 2023, just a little over a year after she had been diagnosed, at the age of 5. So during her journey, we had always said that we wanted to give back because the community had supported us so much. And so we had already vowed that we would give back after Brittney stopped, went through treatment. And then unfortunately, when she passed, we kind of added in this mission of supporting research, because we witnessed firsthand the lack of research because Brittney had no options. So that's kind of how the Brittney's Believer started originally, and then it transformed into this foundation.
Well, first off, I just want to say sorry for everything that's happened. It's got to be so tough. I mean, 5 years old. That's not fair at all. How is your family able to cope during this time? I mean, I'm sure it was really hard.
Yeah, I think like every parent that has ever had their child be diagnosed with cancer, they never ever anticipate that medicine is going to fail them, right? They think that, okay, we're going to do what the doctors say. We're going to, it's 2022, right? And we have to have better advancements. We have to have treatments that are beating this, right? So never in our wildest dreams did the thought ever enter our head. So during her initial part of her treatment, you're just trying to adapt to life, right? Brittany had blood clots. We had to, we became not just parents, but caregivers, advocates, nurses, doctors, schedulers, dealing with all of our insurance, right? It's a full-time job that parents take on when they're caring for a child with cancer, right? And so we also have another child who was 16 at the time. So navigating that as well. Um, so we really tried to just focus on, whatever we could for Brittany, making her happy, making her comfortable, forging through. We were able to move to Boston for about 6 weeks when she did proton radiation, and we met some incredible families there that I really think brought some joy and happiness into such a dark time, right? And then when things started to turn, it was really difficult, and we relied a lot on our community around us. It's really hard because there's a lot of anger that comes with a diagnosis, right? Like, why our child? Why our family? Why is this happening? And so it's really hard to not let yourself drown in that anger, right? And the depression. But as your world is like kind of crumbling around you. Since Brittany's passing, it has been very challenging to not let the anger and the bitterness overwhelm you. My husband and I started grief counseling shortly after she passed, which is something I highly recommend and is, not really talked a lot about for parents that we sought out. But I think that really helped in processing and just kind of moving on in this life now that Brittany is no longer physically here.
Yeah, you mentioned that it just happens in an instant. There's nothing you can do about it. I was diagnosed in 2019 with Ewing sarcoma. I was 11 at the time. I played sports. I was in fifth grade. Out of nowhere, I was diagnosed with this cancer and it takes over your life. And as you were saying, as a parent, you're a full-time caregiver. My mom never had off, 24/7, working. I mean, she did it all. So I can't thank her enough for that and everyone else who helped me. But it really is just so tough.
Yeah, and like you said, like in your case too, it literally comes out of nowhere, right? We see adult cancers, and a lot of that is like environmental and it's lifestyle, right? And it's something that just kind of progresses with life. But childhood cancers, it's really interesting because it's just a gene that decides to switch and become this mutation that just takes over, and it's happens at various ages, like, some kids as, young as like 3 months old or even younger, right? And then some kids it's like 18 and all of a sudden it happens, right? And it's very difficult to be just like one day you're this healthy young kid and then the next you've got cancer and you're thrust into this world that you always saw from afar, right? Like you could see the St. Jude's commercials and things like that, but you just never thought it would hit home. And then when it does, it's so surreal and it's life altering no matter what happens, right? Like even though, you're still here and things like that, your life has been forever changed, right? Like your views, your perspective, the way that you go about your life is forever altered by childhood cancer.
Definitely. I mean, I had my right leg amputated in January of 2020, so that's obviously a big part of my life now, but I am so grateful to be here. And cancer is just such an evil illness.
Yeah.
No one deserves it. It's absolutely horrible.
You're right. And the one silver lining I would say is when you struggle to find one, is we have met some of the most incredible people through childhood cancer, which I'm sure you could probably say the same, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many people out there, doctors, supporters, there's different walks and runs. I mean, there's so much. But then there's also the piece, it's so underfunded. So my next question for you, what are some of the biggest challenges um, in childhood cancer research today? And what are some of those flaws?
Yeah, so I think, what we experienced was, when you hear childhood cancer, it's always followed up by the fact that it's rare. And it's really laughable because it's not rare, right? It's rare because the population of children is such a smaller number in comparison to adults. But if you actually look at it, it's not rare. It's actually happening more frequently. In my town alone, which is a small suburban town, since Brittney was diagnosed in 2022, there's been three other kids in our town that have been diagnosed with three different types of cancers, right? That's crazy. Like you can't tell me that it's rare when it's happening. And then you talk about surrounding towns. So I think some of the biggest things is that there's a misunderstanding that it's rare and that it's not happening as often as it is. And so in turn, there's not a lot of funding put into it because it's considered rare. The numbers don't add up is really what they're looking at is the number of kids diagnosed is vastly less than when we look at adult cancers, which of course is going to be more because the adult population is so much larger. So funding is a real lack in the research aspect as far as, funding the research, also access of information, right? So labs, if one lab is doing something and they're not sharing it, and another lab is doing the same thing, it's not going to be beneficial if they're both running into the same problems, right? Or
Exactly.
one has a problem and they're not sharing with the other. And so I think having a network of sharing information is really critical too, so that we can kind of learn from one another, work with one another, and stop making the same problems or stop running into the same problems, right? And just utilizing all of our skills and our knowledges. And I just feel like that's funding and informational sharing are really probably two of the biggest hurdles. And then lastly, pharmaceutical companies, right? Like it's so disgusting to hear that they don't prioritize drugs for childhood cancer because it's not going to make them money. But that's the truth, and that's the bottom line is they look at it as a financial aspect that it's just not going to be worth it for them.
Yeah, unfortunately, everything in this world is a business, except for nonprofits who are willing to do things out of the kindness of their hearts. Everything's run for money, and
Mhm.
it's devastating. But you were going back to what you were saying, how we should put all of our brains together and not run into the same problems. That doesn't just apply to cancer research. I mean, that applies to everything in life. It really
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, I think, working together, it's better to work together than to work in like individual silos, right? It's so easy to just be focused on like what we want and what we need, but if we, it's kind of like, you never know what's going to happen by helping somebody else out, right?
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, this world doesn't seem to be progressing right now. It seems to be regressing, and I think your advice would really help turn this world around.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about everything going on right now, it's pretty crazy. So, how does Brittany's Believers directly support families impacted by childhood cancer?
Yeah. So again, when we were, going through the trenches of Brittany's journey, a lot of the community rallied around us to help us financially, right? So most of the times when a child's diagnosed, one parent ends up leaving their job, right? And or the jobs don't provide enough time off for families, right? So right now, FMLA only covers about 12 weeks for parental leave. Typically people think about that, when they're giving birth to a child, but that's also all you get when your child's diagnosed with cancer is you can apply for 12 weeks of leave. And then after that, you're kind of either expected to go unpaid or your company might let you go. And the reality is that a child diagnosed with cancer is looking at probably at least a year of treatment, right? And that's not just the visits into the hospital, that's the unexplained emergency visits because they're neutropenic or they're sick and they're tired, or there's a kink in the plan and they don't make counts that week, and so you've got to extend it. And so it's really crazy that, again, we don't have a system in place to help support these families. So typically one parent ends up leaving their job. That means about, one in every 3 or 4 families are losing about 40% of their income, right? That's just paying for their home to live in, a car to provide transportation to the hospital, their insurance, food, basic necessities just to care for their child. My husband and I were very blessed in the fact that our jobs supported us as far as allowing time off, and then the community helping with, fundraising to help us. But there was also other foundations out there that helped, pay our mortgage some months, or, paid for our housing when we moved to Boston for 6 weeks, right? And so that meant a lot to us, that it was one less thing that we had to stress and worry about, and that we could spend the time focusing and being with Brittney. And so that was one of our big things, is that when we were done, we wanted to pay back what was provided to us. And so one of the things that we do is we provide financial assistance to families that are either in treatment or up to 6 months post-treatment. And so far, we've been able to help pay for things like, mortgage, car payments, utilities, like keeping on their heat, their electricity. We've also, had to help pay for funeral expenses because, that's another thing that parents never, ever, ever have dreamed about, right? And
They
so
have to
being,
go through it.
yeah. So being able to provide some financial relief is one of the things that we do with the money that we raise through our nonprofit.
Yeah, that's sensational. I mean, taking what happened to you guys and then being able to help others, other families, that's so kind. That's that's great, really. So since starting the organization, do you have any success stories or moments that have really stood out to you?
Oh, gosh. So since we started Brittany's Believers officially as a foundation, it's just been overwhelming, the support from the community and helping us be able to do what we wanted to do, right? So our biggest thing was to, give back and provide families financial assistance. But the second thing for us after Brittany passed was supporting research, right? And so we saw that there's a huge lack of funding, and actually the majority of funding for research comes from like nonprofits and, kids doing lemonade stands and things like that, right? Because the government only gives them about 4%, which is pennies to the dollar. Um, and so just seeing the community rally behind what we inspired to do to keep Brittany's legacy alive has been really heartwarming to see that other people want to support us. And then also just getting the letters from families every now and then, just saying how much that support meant to them. It was just a relief that they didn't have to stress about a bill. We also 2 times a year, I like to go to one of the hospitals Brittany was treated at, and we provide like gifts and, toys and donations. It just helps me in my grief. And just seeing some of the kids, how happy they are and how much like a little stuffed animal makes their day. Because we know, having been in the hospital day in and day out, and I'm sure you remember too, it gets really boring and it's hard to be in there. And so anything that kind of can brighten your day or bring you a smile, right? So things like that, it just people saying thank you and knowing that it really made such an impact, and that Brittany's, legacy is living on, and us being able to do that. All of those are really, really impactful moments and memorable.
Yeah. I mean, I know childhood cancer is severely underfunded. At my high school, I live just outside of Philadelphia. We do a mini-thon, which up at Penn State they do thon, which I'm sure
Yeah.
you've heard of. It's a
Yep.
great way to raise money. They raise millions a year up at Penn State. So that gives us some hope.
Yeah. And it is like incredible that what I find really heartwarming is the people that are inspired to do things like Dawn, right? And typically they haven't walked that line of childhood cancer, right? So it's like the people that are inspired to fundraise and help that haven't been impacted directly, but they've just been inspired by the stories, right? Um, that means a lot, right? For you know, um, to see the impact that they have. And so we have an annual event and it's called Bands for Brittney. So Brittney had a very big passion for dance. As soon as she could start walking, she would run into our kitchen and she would put on these kind of like little dance shows. She would tell Alexa to play music and dress in her little costumes. I have all these videos, which are priceless. And then she loved to like sing too, right? So she loved music and she loved dancing and she loved performing. And so we we started Bands for Brittney as our big annual fundraiser, and we have live music and food trucks and things like that. And so that's kind of what is the biggest financial drive in our foundation that help allows us to do the support. And again, it all comes from the community coming out and supporting us. But it's also a fun way to kind of keep her passions alive. And, you know, and we do it, typically right around her birthday, which is May 27th. So we usually do it in May, and it kind of helps with our grief too, as far as kind of keeping this big thing, around her birthday and showcasing all of her loves.
Yeah, I mean, just never forget. That's the
Yeah.
most important thing. Just remembering and honoring those before us.
Yeah, yeah, because um, there's always been somebody ahead of us, right? So a lot of the foundations that helped us were only there because they had already gone through it, right? And so we're not the first and we're not going to be the last, right? And so one of the biggest things that we can do is just take our experiences, good, bad, whatever they were, and share them with others. I think that, going back to the thing we talk about, knowledge is power. I look back and one of my big things now is just being very open about the lack of research, the lack of funding, the lack of awareness, right? Like
Yeah.
even when Brittney was diagnosed, I didn't even know that like September was Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. No idea. We also never had heard of like Cure Fest, which is a huge annual childhood cancer awareness event down in DC, so we are just trying to share what we've learned and educate. And I feel like that way, parents that are coming into it, or even young teens that are being diagnosed, they're just having more information, right? They're having more resources, which I think is really important too, because that's the other thing too, is you get thrust into this world and there's no handbook, right? You're relying on other teens, other parents, what they've gone through and experiences. And so if we can just kind of share more of that, I think it's really helpful.
Spreading awareness is the most we can do. Getting
Yeah.
it out there and just letting people know the issues that are going on
Hmm.
is really the most we can do right now. It's not even donating, it's just getting the word out. But
Yeah.
yeah, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, like even if you can't donate, if you share something like a post or a podcast, you never know who's going to come across it or, who might need it, right? So even if you can't financially support things, if you're just sharing the information that's being put out there, you're just having conversations about it, that's impactful. That's helpful. I think there's been this kind of, big, you know, childhood cancer sucks. Nobody wants to hear it. It hurts. I remember, I would hear the St. Jude's commercials and I would be so emotionally upset. Prior to Brittney, I would change. It's uncomfortable. I would change the channel, right? And it's unfortunate that I felt that way too. But now we need to just kind of break that down and say, yeah, it sucks and it's uncomfortable, but it's here and it's not going anywhere unless we do something about it, right? Unless we become advocates, raise our voices, raise awareness, and make an impact because it's just not going to go away.
Yeah, I mean, everyone is worth something in this world. Everyone has a purpose, everyone has a voice. So
Yeah.
do whatever you can. But how can listeners get involved, whether through donations, advocacy, or volunteering?
Yeah, so I mean, advocacy is huge, right? Whether you actually have a personal story or not. advocating is really important, right? Because yes, I as a bereaved mom have a story to share. You as a cancer survivor have a story to share, but we also need more voices out there, right? And so, joining in advocacy is really important. I know in the state of Massachusetts, we have a couple bills right now that we're trying to pass to support research. So, if you have, look at your state, if they have some, bills that are in play, or even right now, the whole landscape of the federal thing is going on, and there are some really big bills impacting childhood cancer that are trying to be passed. And so, calling your reps, your senators, writing letters, just saying that this is important to you, is really impactful. Donating is really great if you have the means, right? And so, what I would say is there's a lot of great research happening. It's just a matter of finding it, right? And so when Brittney had passed and we decided that we wanted to support research, we wanted to make sure it was supporting her cancer. So rhabdomyosarcoma, which is under sarcoma, right? And so you with Ewing sarcoma, they all kind of align. And so that was really important to us as far as supporting her type of cancer because there's a lot of places that you can donate. You just don't know where the money is going to, right? And so there's a lot of childhood cancers out there, and they all deserve funding, but there are some that are more funded than others. And so we found a research institute. It's called CCTDI. It's the Children's Cancer Therapy Development Institute, and they are a huge rhabdomyosarcoma research organization, along with a lot of the other ones, medulloblastoma, DIPG. And so we were able to meet with the scientific director there. His name is Charles Keller, and it was just incredible the work that they're doing as a nonprofit research facility. And so we know that when we donate and through our foundation, we know exactly where the funds are being used. They're very transparent. They are doing some incredible work that just is in the brink of moving on to really great next steps. So just, look at where your research funding is going, right? Like find a connection and make sure that there's transparency too, as far as that goes. And then as far as our foundation, Brittney's Believers, like I said, we do have an annual event that is Bands for Brittney. And then we have, just donations on our page. We also have like little events that we do throughout the year. So we have one coming up. It's called with a local hockey team. They do Hockey Fights Cancer. And so even just like liking our page, following it, checking out our website, there's a lot of great stories about Brittney, her pictures, things that we've been in the news for, things like that. And so, even just, following us on Facebook and Instagram is really helpful for us, growing that network and sharing Brittney's story.
Yeah. I mean, also a huge thing is donations. I can't stress that enough. I mean, not monetary, we've covered monetary, but
Yeah.
also donating to hospitals. These kids have all the time in the world, and their brains are so creative. And like you mentioned earlier, there's really nothing for them to do. So donating toys, dolls, anything, I mean, it just means the world to them.
Oh yeah. I mean that like I said, we donate twice a year. So outside of the financial thing. So around Brittany's birthday, and around Christmas to help with my grief and not being able to do those things for her, right? Like Christmas shop or birthday shop. We deliver packages down to the hospital. And so one of the hospitals she was treated at has an oncology floor for kids. It's about 28 beds. And so we usually do 28 care packages for the inpatients and then extra stuff for the outpatient facility as well. And it really does make an impact. I know when Brittney was diagnosed, I think one of her second cancer treatments, she was riding a tricycle throughout the halls at the hospital with an IV pulled behind her, and that's because somebody donated that, right? And so even her being able to ride a bike in a hospital was really helpful to just kind of keep her moving. Or there was plenty of times that, we used wagons to kind of pull her around because she wanted to get out of her room, right? So it helps, kind of break up the day, especially when you're impatient and you're stuck to an IV pole. They want to be creative, they want to be kids, which they all deserve to be. And that's the other thing too, is that people don't see that side of it, right? Like, I don't know how open you were with your story going through treatment, but we decided to keep Brittney's kind of on the private side out of respect for her and not being able to say what she wanted to share. And I think it's great that there are people out there that are kind of showcasing the raw, real side of what these kids are actually going through. Sorry, my dogs.
Oh,
It's not, that they go in, they get treatment, they go home. Like there's a lot of traumatic things that we as parents, and I'm sure you probably remember too, as far as there's a lot of trauma and PTSD that comes with going through a cancer treatment as well. And so again, to kind of help these kids through it with anything, like you said, donations, toys, gifts, blankets, right? Like, how often were you in the hospital and like you just get those crappy cotton blankets, they're not warm,
all the time.
you feel like you're sterile, and so that's one of the things too is that we around Christmas time we donate these very plush, comfy blankets because Brittney always loved things that was like soft and comfortable. And so just even things like that make such a big difference when you're just stuck there.
These kids don't choose this life,
Yeah.
and that is really important to note. And they shouldn't act like it's, and we shouldn't act like it's prison. So donating anything, toys, I mean, these kids really need it. It's much appreciated.
Yeah, like you said, they didn't choose this, right? And they didn't do anything in their life that made this happen, right? Or again, it was just a genetic mutation that causes this. And so again, at the end of the day, it should just be about allowing them to be kids, even though they have to go through something that is truly, truly horrific. And nobody should have to be going through, which again ties back to research and funding that, if we just made this more of a priority, you know, the treatments haven't changed in 30, 40 years, right? So that's astounding. Like how have we not developed better treatments? We're sending people into space for fun, right? How is that more important than lives of young kids?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
You know?
Yeah,
But
it's tough.
it is. It's really hard because you just wish that the people that had the indispensable amount of money would actually see something as a priority versus dreaming of, you know, going into space and doing all of these kind of irrelevant things, right? Like there's better things that they could be investing their money in.
There's more important things
Yeah.
for right now.
Like our
Well,
kids' futures. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have done such an amazing job with this organization. So, what does it mean to you personally to see Brittany's legacy live on through your work?
Yeah. So for me, Brittney was 5 years old, right? She didn't get to start kindergarten. There was probably, a couple of her friends at preschool, right? So she was a very little kid. So for me to have Brittany's legacy continue on means the world because she lives with me every day in everything that I do, right? I carry that in my heart. And so she was this incredible little girl that I just wanted the world to know. And I knew that she was going to do amazing things. I just didn't know that she would be this inspiration for a foundation and that she would be giving me a different purpose in life, right? As far as I'm still her mom, but instead of watching her grow up, I'm going to continue fighting and advocating for what she had to go through to make a difference. And so for the foundation to do and do what it's doing and support others and being able to share Brittany's story just means the world to me as a bereaved mom because I don't want her to be forgotten. Her life mattered. Yes, she was 5, but she was an incredible 5-year-old who deserved so much better. Um, it helps in my grief to be able to just still talk about her, even if I do cry or it chokes me up. It's just all this love and anger too that lives kind of coexist that I just need to express in a way by sharing her story and giving back and hoping to make a difference, right? Hoping to see a change. And I know it's not going to change anything for Brittney, but like we said earlier, like we weren't, Brittney's not the first kid that was diagnosed. She's not going to be the last. And so if it can just even help another parent in knowing that they're not alone, right? Because I think that's a big thing too, and I'm sure maybe you felt this too, you felt very alone when you were diagnosed, right? Or like, it's only happening to me. And so also seeing that it's not just you that are going through it or experiencing it can be very helpful and therapeutic as well. So again, just getting to share Brittney with anyone who wants to listen, and just seeing how incredible of a little girl that she is and was, and that she deserves so much more. And just hopefully that inspires somebody to say, like, yeah, we need to do better for these kids.
You've been through it. My mom's been through it. If you could send a message to families currently navigating a childhood cancer diagnosis, what would that message be?
First off, just know there's nothing that you did, right? That's one of the biggest struggles is I know that I went through the trenches of like,
Yeah.
what did I do? What did I miss, right? There's nothing that you did, right? There's nothing that you could have done to prevent this. There's nothing that did to cause this, right? Educate yourself would be another one. I actually have some medical experience, and so knowledge is power, right? Um, Educate yourself, look things up, research things, ask questions. Ask all the questions, even if you feel like they're stupid, it doesn't matter. Ask them, write them down. And if your team makes you feel that you shouldn't be asking things, or they make you feel stupid, then that's not the team for you, right? Like that's another big thing is you need to be with a team that works with you, not against you, or feels like you don't have the right to be a part of those conversations. So get second opinions. If your gut is telling you that you want a second opinion, or you just want to make sure, don't worry about offending anybody, right? This is your child. This is something that you want to look back and you want to know that you did everything humanly possible, no matter the outcome, right? And so that's the other thing too, is when we're not sharing knowledge, it's hard to know if you're with the best team for your diagnosis, for your treatment plan, and for that relationship, because you're going to be working with those people for, again, probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
Um, and then, just don't be afraid to reach out to other parents, and I know that it can be probably really hard sometimes if a foundation reaches out and they have a bereaved child, right? Because you're like, I don't want to, your child passed. I can't even think about that. But they have information, they have knowledge, they have resources. They're reaching out to just be like, this is what I went through. I just want to share with you and be a resource. Um, so I think those are big things. And then also just trying to find the balance between doing everything that you can, but also still trying to just enjoy every day with your child, no matter the outcome, right? Like we all want to, we all want to see our child cured. It does happen, and unfortunately it doesn't happen, right? And so try not to focus too much on that. Just treat every day as each individual day, and just try to make happy moments and memories for those kids, no matter what's going to happen, right?
When a child is diagnosed, as a parent, you feel the responsibility, obviously, to care for them and be there for them 24/7. But it also, if you think about it, gives you the opportunity to be on the front lines of advocating for an illness like this, a life-threatening illness. So I think what you guys have done is, like I said, absolutely amazing. And you have done everything in your power that you can to make your contribution to childhood cancer. And I really appreciate that.
Thanks. I mean, would I want to walk this journey? No, right? Like no parent, no child wants to do this. And I think one of the biggest things that I have learned is there's not much that we can control. There's probably very little we can control. But the one thing that we can is how we respond to things, right? And it can be really hard to see that, right? As far as when you feel like you were in the trenches and that everything's against you and every test is coming back negative or not what you wanted to hear, it's really hard to not be angry and bitter and things. And so I think one of the biggest things too, sorry, these guys are very needy. Is just how we respond and how we react. Oh, this is Brittany's Make-A-Wish dog. His name's Max. She loved the Grinch, and so she named it after Max in the Grinch movie.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's sweet.
Um, yeah. But yeah, I just think, sharing our stories is what really makes an impact. You can advocate as much as you want, but if you don't have that piece to it, right? That emotional tie, that's where it really starts to make people, you know, pay attention, right? Like they can see the St. Jude's commercials like you and I do. They can see the news stories, but when you actually have a parent or a family or a child that has gone through it sitting there saying like, this is what I went through. This is what it's like. That's where the impact really starts to kind of make its difference.
And when you're obviously faced with a situation like this, it's okay to feel those emotions. And it's important to. It's important to express those emotions and to talk about it because if you don't, it's just going to bubble up inside of you.
That is a really good point, and I think that's something that I also feel is lacking for parents. So Brittany was 4, she was 5, and she was diagnosed. You were older, right? Were you ever given as a resource therapy during your diagnosis?
So I was treated at CHOP, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, at the main location in the city.
Hmm.
So they gave me a therapist to talk to about once a week. Now, I was in 5th grade at this time, so I really think it would have been more helpful for my parents. I mean, as a kid, I was kind of just blindly thrown into it, and I didn't understand. I didn't really feel emotion toward it, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the parent has the harder part. So I feel like it's more important for the parent to get support than it is, at least in my case, for me, because I can worry about that later down the line. Right now, I'm just focused on staying alive.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great that you were provided, right, or given the option to have therapy or talk to somebody once a week. And so that's something I was curious about because again, Brittany was 4, but also there are kids out there that probably could benefit. And again, I don't know how often that's happening. It's amazing that CHOP did that, right? But I don't know about resources at some of these other hospitals, right? And so to your point, it's not given to the parents, right? So the parents are now tasked with taking on all these other things, and then they're not given any additional resources, right? Like they're told to just go home and start doing XYZ, and then mentally they just don't have any support, right? And so I think that's another big resource that could be really helpful for parents. Like you said, it's okay to feel these things when you're going through it, right? They're all valid and you should feel those, and you shouldn't feel bad about having those feelings, but we should also be setting our parents up for more support with, again, not just the financial stuff, but mental, right? Like we need to get it out there so that we can be better caregivers when we're going through it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can't get through life by just sticking to yourself. Can't do that. Humans are social beings and we crave human interaction.
Yeah.
So it's really important to talk about what's on your mind always, because if you don't, you're just gonna be hurting yourself.
I think that is so powerful too, because even like in grief, right? If I wasn't doing the foundation, I think my grief would really overcome me and overwhelm me. And so the foundation is an outlet for my grief. I still carry it every day. I still probably cry at least once a day, right? But the foundation gives me this kind of um, outlet and this purpose, right? And so I think that's the other thing too is like we just need to talk about these things. We need to be more open about it. And again, like when we talk about sharing our stories and it's uncomfortable for people, bereaved parents, that's uncomfortable too. But the more we talk about it and the more we kind of share these stories, it just becomes more therapeutic. And I think just kind of healing in a sense, right? And sharing your story too, as far as for other survivors or other kids that are being diagnosed, to just say like, okay, this is normal to feel this way, or it's okay that I'm not processing what's happening and I'm just worried about surviving, or I don't want to talk about it, or I don't even want to think about it, right? I think we get so much caught up with like what we should and shouldn't be doing rather than just openly sharing and kind of taking from one another, right? And I think that's one of the great things about the community is once you get into it and you meet these other people in the Childhood Cancer Network, um, no matter what stage you're in, and even as a bereaved parent, they're still there, they're still supportive. You know, um, they're incredible people that you meet in the worst time of your life.
Yeah, the thing that I always found interesting, the incredibly unique aspect of cancer, is that it doesn't only affect the person who has it, it affects everyone around them who cares for them, supports them, loves them, their friends, family, everyone who's involved in their day-to-day life or life in general. So it's just really a terrible thing, and everyone deserves to have, I mean, I'm sure everyone has been impacted by cancer, childhood cancer or not, adult cancer, at least one way or another. They know someone who had it, you know, it's really unfortunate how common it is.
Yeah. And to your point too, it's not it's like it's kind of like a web, right? And so it expands out to siblings, the parents, aunts, uncles, it kind of, when you start sharing these stories, it impacts a whole community, right? Because they come around and they support and things. But yeah, it's not just like an individual, it's the entire family that gets diagnosed, right? Gets impacted. Yeah.
For you, how has running this organization changed your own perspective of life, love, and purpose?
Yeah. Running the foundation has really just helped me in my grief, right? And it has shown me that if anything, at the end of the day, it costs nothing to be kind, right? Um, Kindness can really speak a lot of volume on anyone's day, right? We're all going through something, right? And so not everybody is so open about it. Not everybody you meet is going to tell you what's going on in their life that day, right? So I think being kind to one another is really important. Since Brittney's passing and running the foundation and seeing the very dark, nitty-gritty side of childhood cancer, it has just also made me more open to what is going on in the world around me, right? And so kind of again, it's not just my world that has been impacted. There are so many families. And so it's just kind of like these blinders coming off or like the glass shattering, right? That this is a very big problem and that it is something that we need to really be prioritizing and focusing on. Um, it also, just allows me to connect with other parents and just, share and also just feel that I'm not alone, and whether their child has passed or not, just being like, okay, it didn't just happen to me. I wasn't being punished for something, right? Like you see other incredible families and parents and kids that are going through the same thing. So it's not like, it's so easy to just be like, oh, this happened to me because I did something bad, right? Or, so it just helps me. And also being able to just give back in Brittney's name and know that we're helping other families and the impact that it's making just allows me to coexist with my grief in a better way, right? Like that she's still making an impact. It's not what I had ever imagined for her. But she's living on and people are hearing her name and they're seeing her photos and they're seeing her story and just realizing that her life mattered. And hopefully it inspires somebody that is going to just find a cure for cancer or financially invest in it, but it's been helpful for me in my grief to have something that kind of gives me a new purpose in life.
I've been thinking about this a lot, and it's hard to think about, but not everything in life has meaning. Stuff just happens for no reason,
Yeah.
and illnesses are one of them. You can't control what goes on, but you can control the way you react and the way you handle it. And the way you have handled your situation is amazing and everything you could have done. So you should pat yourself on the back, be proud of yourself. You're doing a great job.
You are far too kind. But you're right. Not everything happens for a reason. Things just happen, which sucks because we as humans feel like we can control everything, right? And as parents, we feel like we should be able to fix everything. We should be able to, save our kids. That's
Yeah.
what our jobs are. And so to face that realization that there's literally nothing we can do is so hard, right? But I appreciate your kindness. I feel like, you know, again, there's going to be another family and there's been families behind us being diagnosed. And so if I can take what we've learned and just share it and pass it on as far as resources, um, I feel like I would be doing a disservice if I didn't do that, right? Like you with sharing your story, right? If you didn't do that, which you could, there's parents and there's kids out there that when they're done with cancer, they just want to move on. They want to kind of close that chapter and they don't want it to be a part of their life forever, right? They say don't let cancer define you, but it's hard not to, right? Like when you've gone through something as life altering as cancer, a limb removal, death of a child, like it's you can't say that it hasn't defined you, right? That's what our experiences do. And so the ones that choose to actively still be in this world, right? And be a part of this community, and share their stories, I just think is really impactful. And just being resources for those that are coming along behind us.
Cancer doesn't define you, I would say. I think it's a part of your story, but there's so much more to you than just cancer. You have hobbies, interests, passions, everything. Everyone's unique in this world. And unfortunately, people just get struck with an illness like this. So
Yeah,
it's very important to raise awareness, as I'm doing, as you're doing as a parent, pretty much.
yeah,
Just
I
raise
agree.
awareness. Yeah. Well, before we wrap up, is there anything else that you'd want to add?
I just, if anybody's interested, they can, learn more about Brittney by going to her website. It's brittney'sbelievers.com. And I just want to thank you, Jacob, for, reaching out and wanting to learn about Brittney and share her story in our foundation. Again, that means a lot to me. Um, I know that I think you had talked to Jen Caruso with Swirls Around the World. And again, it just shows the incredible community. We met Jen when Brittney was diagnosed. And they also kind of inspire us for the work that they do, right? And so, again, it means a lot to be able to continue to share our stories of our loved ones. And so I want to thank you for what you're doing and also finding the motivational piece of this, right? So it's really easy to get into the sad parts, the depression, the grief. And so even coming on here, I was like, oh, how am I going to talk and be motivational about my foundation of losing my daughter? But you really made it a great experience. And I appreciate you seeing the work that I'm doing in the way that you see it, because as a bereaved mom, it's really hard some days to do that and to see that. So thank you for shining a light on what I'm doing
You
and the
know,
impact it's making.
I don't think I've had anybody ever give me a personal comment as personal as that. So it really touched home.
Oh,
Thank you a lot. Uh,
yeah.
People thrive off each other. Organizations thrive off each other. You met Jen. I met
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
It's just communities. We just need each other, which is a huge thing that I'm
Yeah.
going to keep on stressing forever. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to hop on to this call today. It means a lot. It means,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm excited. Like I said, I love to share Brittany's story. So when you reached out and the fact that, Jen recommended me, I was like, hey, this is a no-brainer. So,
Yeah. Thank you so much.
all right. Thanks, Jacob.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Talking with Elena today reminded me that even in the face of unimaginable loss, love, action, and purpose can create lasting change. Brittney's Believers is proof that one life can leave a legacy that empowers, inspires, and impacts the lives of many. To everyone listening, if you want to support childhood cancer research, advocate for awareness, or help families on their journey, please visit Brittney'sBelievers.com. Every action counts, and every life matters. Thank you for listening, and see you next time on the Motivational Mic. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. Together, we can spread positivity and make a difference. Join me next time for more incredible stories and insights. Until then, stay motivated and keep pushing forward. Thank you for listening, and see you next time on the Motivational Mic.